Us, abandoned ship. We're not caring about this car. We're thinking about the next year.
Exit clauses, yada yada yada.
Hulkenberg is the blue shell right now. Angle grinder guy, he gets a raise.
There you go.
Whoa.
He gets both salaries.
There you go.
What are they doing with the 5th and 6th seats?
Yeah, it's just Weenie Hut Formula One Junior now.
They don't fire up the same way that F1 cars do.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for the Tired Boys podcast. I'm your host, Justin.
And I'm Aaron. Welcome back, everyone. We've got the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix recap episode today. We've got some Formula One Academy, some Formula 2, some quick hitters, but looking forward to getting into it. A pretty eventful race, I would say, to have some good conversations on.
Yeah, I thought it was a pretty good one as far as safety goes. It's been on the safer end. You know, me and you were talking about it right before we turned on the stream. Thinking it's just like gotten safer and safer over the years. So love to see that. I'm gonna be sprinkling in some like just things I caught on camera type things throughout the weekend. There are just some like really funny moments as well to go through. So yeah, lot to talk about the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix race weekend. Got some quick hitters ahead of all of that. So Aaron, let's get into it.
Sounds good. So for the start of the quick hitters, it's going to be pretty F1 heavy today. So not much outside of Formula One to start off, but there have been a number of reports, and this is kind of coming to mind or becoming a little more of a worry as we're getting close to the new engine regulations next year. But a number of teams, Red Bull, Mercedes, and Audi, are all reporting some issues with the 2026 engine and the new regulations. Mercedes is looking at problems in terms of the output power, particularly in their simulations at Monza. The car runs out of energy deployment by the time it's halfway down the main straight. So at that point, without the electrical deployment that's part of the 2026 regulations, the car actually is running less horsepower at that point than the current Formula 2 cars. So somewhere around like 550 or 560 horsepower without that electrical reserve that's pushing it forward, where the Formula 2 cars are putting out somewhere, I think, around 620, 640 horsepower. So there are some definite concerns there in terms of the quality of racing, the power and kind of the optimization of these new engines and new engine regulations that are coming in. And alongside that, the big report from Red Bull was that they are having a lot of integration problems between the new electrical systems and the combustion engine. So the car, or the combustion engine and electrical system, do work together, but not very well, and they have been struggling to find out or to figure out how to make them actively work together and properly, I guess, with the new regulations for next year.
Yeah, long time to get that kind of stuff sorted, and I wonder, is like the regulations are in stone. It's not like they are like being proposed or anything like this. Like this is the teams like working at the solution of how do they build a car that fits like these specifications. So
Right.
I guess the question would be like over time we would want to see or hear messages of like these things improving over over the course of the 2025 season, but likely something we won't hear a lot from the top teams, as
Right.
far as like they're definitely going to be splitting their time 2025 focus until for whatever reason, a team would feel like they're like out of contention, then they just like turn sights to the 2026 regulations. But these are some interesting problems coming in kind of at the maybe like early to mid stages of it.
Yeah.
Primarily like you're stating from Mercedes, Red Bull, Ford, and Audi. Yeah, so that's interesting to hear, to be honest.
Yeah, and especially because this is one of those components that's kind of outside of that preparing for 2026 or changing your focus from the team. Because with teams that are talking about changing their focus to 2026 and everything, typically, and Williams has kind of come out and talked about this. They're That's primarily for the aerodynamic packages. Like with the engine regulations, they've kind of now known about this for a couple of years and have been constantly working on those. But the shifting of focus with some teams like Williams, they're using their wind tunnel time as well to test aero components for the 2026 cars, as opposed to testing any new components for this year's car. So at that point, probably not looking to bring as many upgrades throughout the year. As we continue on with using that wind tunnel time. But yeah, with the engines, there's definitely some concerns because if I mean Mercedes is supplying power to a number of teams on the grid. Audi's a new team; they don't really have a fallback. Red Bull and Ford's partnership is a new engine partnership in Formula One, so they don't have really a fallback plan or another option. So if things don't improve, like this could create for a really interesting first year of the regulations until some of these things get ironed out if they aren't ahead of the game. And this is going to be the first time that you and I have really seen a massive change in regulations, such as these 2026 ones, and potentially see the grid just be um, very far apart after some competitive years of racing here.
So these are specifically for the engine specifications. So we'll
Right.
still be using downforce or ground effect generated downforce for the car.
I
It's
believe
the
so.
like
Yeah.
the engines are changing because to my mind that's like the biggest regulation change that we've experienced is
Yeah.
the shift from I guess it would have been like
Oh, from like the body and wing aerodynamics to the ground effect. Okay.
right, to where it,
Yeah.
like, gets, suction to the ground rather than, like, push down from the other, aerodynamic elements. So, to my mind, that was a pretty big shift, but, yeah, you're right. This is a really interesting problem for, yeah, the various engine suppliers that are gonna be, shipping their equipment out to the various teams. So yeah, looking forward to hear more on this as we get more information over the course of the year.
Yeah, and we really may not know much until like we actually see the cars out at testing, and even then it's
Sure.
like who knows how much teams are hiding or covering up there with those test sessions. But yeah, it's gonna be very interesting to see uh, across the year any new news that comes out. um, but along with those vehicle changes for 2026, and this was something adopted by a number of drivers this year, they're going to be implementing the new cooling fireproof vests for at least certain races across the year that will help keep body temperatures down for drivers. It was something that was focused on after Qatar a couple years ago being just brutally hot, and the number of drivers that were struggling with heat, exhaustion, and overheating after that race. So that will be permanently implemented, but a number of drivers were actually utilizing that this week in Jeddah for some of the testing sessions, and I think some even for the race as well with the hot temperatures there.
Yeah, but the amount of races that are in these very arid environments, the more you're gonna want, help regulating your temperature, but then also the more races get added to the calendar, the more your recovery becomes a very important part of like at least the driver's regimen. So having anything you can that can help ease the environmental pressure of a weekend just to help you keep banging on at a solid clip. So that's like a really interesting kind of safety driver comfort addition to the grid. So very very cool.
Yeah, and we've mentioned some of the other ones like the drink systems that they're implementing that are going to be required and everything as well. So there's a lot of those driver safety things, and particularly this year we have Bahrain and Saudi Arabia a little bit further into the schedule with the readjustment having Australia, China, Japan at the start of the season. So a little bit warmer temperatures than even previous years in Jeddah. So definitely a good opportunity to test those out for some of the drivers, and a good time to kind of implement that for the drivers and their safety overall. But then the last quick hitters. So just looking in